Hello, hello, YouTube. So I have something to tell you guys. I'm gay.
I kissed a girl and I liked it. The taste of her cherry chapstick.
I couldn't resist. But this is my coming out story. So I'm going to skip up to going into high school. So going into high school, it was obviously a scary transition. I didn't have many friends, and the friends I did have were pretty much all girls. So all the time, because I had so many friends who were girls, I would always get questioned asking, did I like any of them? Who did I like? And I would always just respond the same way, saying, no, I don't like anybody. Um, and if anyone thought I liked someone specific, I would always deny it because I was terrified to think that someone would think that I liked someone because I had never dated anybody and it was a huge scary thought. So during my sophomore year, I decided that I wanted to try and date somebody. I had this one friend that I ran cross country with, and we had a couple classes together and we hung out a decent amount and we were really good friends. So I decided, maybe I like this girl. At the time, I didn't know I was gay. It never really crossed my mind. And so I had somehow convinced myself that I did like this girl. So after a couple weeks of mustering up the courage to ask her out, I finally did, and we went on our first date. So we went to this small pizza place and just sat down and hung out and talked. So it was not really any different than us normally hanging out. And then after we had pizza, we went back to her house and again just hung out for a couple hours, and that was pretty much it. So my first date was pretty simple, pretty boring. We didn't really do much, but just the fact that it was considered a date, I freaked out and I was so nervous, and the whole time it was super awkward, and afterwards I didn't want to go through that again. But because we were really good friends, I didn't want to hurt her. I didn't want to tell her that I didn't like her, especially since it was my idea to go on the date. And so I made a really stupid decision and decided to ignore her. So during the entire next week after our date, I would walk down different hallways. I would not speak to her in class. If I saw her, I would turn the other direction. I did everything I could to not have to confront her and tell her that I didn't like her. And so, as you can imagine, she got pretty mad. We didn't end up talking, and we had a huge argument, and after that, we never really talked to each other very much anymore. So I pretty much lost my friend because I just didn't want to hurt her. And so, over the next year or so, I began to question my sexuality. Anytime that the thought crossed my mind, I would be terrified because in South Carolina, that's not something that people really were. I didn't know anyone who was gay, and I wasn't sure how my family would react, and wasn't sure if my family accepted it. So yeah, anytime the thought crossed my mind, I would try my best to get rid of it. I would go online and look up articles to convince myself that I was straight. I would take MI gay quizzes and answer the way I should be answering. I would even pray for me to become straight. I would pray to not have these thoughts. I did everything I could. And so every time the thought crossed my mind, I decided to try to start liking some girl. Over the next couple years, I would like various different girls, and every time I chose the girl that I liked, I would tell all my friends, and I would text her and do my best to try to get her to like me too, because I didn't want people thinking that I was gay. I had a couple other dates. Some of the girls liked me, some of the girls didn't, but every time I did the exact same thing I did with that first girl. We would go on a date, we would be really good friends, I would get nervous, I would get awkward, I would freak out, and then I would ignore her. And so every time I would basically lose our friendship because I didn't know what was wrong with me, I didn't know why I was doing this, I just knew that something wasn't right. Fast forward to after graduation, over the summer, I decided, okay, I'm going to college. It's a time to start my life completely over. I am going to be honest with myself. I'm going to be honest with the people that I meet. And that's when I kind of made the realization that, okay, maybe I am gay. During the summer, I was trying to find a roommate. I was on Facebook and I was messaging people and meeting all these new people who were going to my college because I was going out of state, so I didn't know anybody. And so it was a perfect chance for me to completely start over. Eventually, I had a couple of people that I talked to on a pretty daily basis. And so one day I decided that I was going to tell them that I was gay. So this was the first time I had ever told anybody. I sat down on my bed, I typed up the message that I was gay, and I just stared at it for probably an hour, maybe 2 hours. I just couldn't get up the courage to send it. I was like, How are they going to react? Are they going to hate me? Are they going to out me to the entire school? Am I going to not have any friends when I go to this place? I was thinking all the worst case scenarios. I was just freaking out. But finally, I decided to hit the send button, and it was out there. It was out of my control. There was nothing more I could do. And so the second I sent it, I threw my phone across the room. I ran out of the room, and I just left my phone sitting there for a while because I I wasn't in control. I had already told them, and I was scared and terrified as to what they would say. But after a couple hours, I decided to go back and read and see how they responded. And it was the most supportive, most amazing response I could ever have gotten. They were all completely understanding. They were happy for me. They didn't care. It didn't make any difference. And even after the fact, they never treated me differently. It felt like I had never even, like, it didn't define me. It didn't matter. And so that kind of helped me get ready to go into college and start my new life. Fast forward to college. During the first few weeks, as you can imagine, it was pretty stressful. I was meeting all these new people, meeting my roommate, trying to find my classes, getting used to taking college classes. And so I never really had a chance to test the waters and tell people I was coming out, because when you're meeting people, they're not going to ask you, are you gay? Are you straight? It's just not something that comes up. So I was still basically in the closet going into college, other than the people that I texted. But then after about a month or so, after I pretty much was settled in and I was on a routine, I decided that I wanted to try and start dating guys. But I didn't know where to start. Even then, I didn't know anyone who was gay, and you couldn't really tell if a guy was gay or not. And so I just didn't know where to start. And so, against my better judgment, and I told myself I would never do it, I decided to download a dating app. So I downloaded Tinder. So I made my account, made my profile, and started swiping through left and right through all the guys on my college campus. And after a couple minutes, I had a couple matches, and I decided to message them. So I messaged a few of them, and this was the first time I'd ever talked to someone who was gay, or someone who I knew was gay. And so after probably a week or 2 weeks, I decided to meet up with this one guy. It was a pretty simple date. We went to the Starbucks on campus, and we sat outside and we just talked for 2 or 3 hours. After talking to him, it was nice to have a conversation with this guy, but I realized I didn't really like him. But this was the first time that I had ever gone on a date with a guy, and the first time I'd ever gone on a date in general where I didn't freak out and I didn't feel awkward and it felt like something was right. And so that's how I knew that, okay, I probably am actually gay. Like, the reason I was freaking out all those times with those girls in high school was because I just wasn't being truthful to myself, and I didn't know who I was, and I didn't accept who I was. And so after the date, I just told the guy that, okay, yeah, you were really nice, but we weren't really compatible, and it was fine. And so I ended up going on a couple more Tinder dates. And after probably 2 or 3, I ended up going on this one Tinder date with this guy that I actually did like. And so we hung out for a while. I was really interested in this guy. I liked him. I wanted to keep hanging out with him. And so over the next week or 2, we met up multiple times. We would start to go get meals together. We would start hanging out together. And so the more we started hanging out, the harder it was to hide this from my friends, because my core group of friends on campus didn't know I was gay, because they weren't the people I had been texting over the summer. All the time they would ask me, where have you been? And I would just make up some excuse saying, oh, I was at a meeting, or oh, I was doing this, I was doing that. I never told them what I was actually doing. I knew I was starting to like this guy, and so I knew I had to tell my friends. So one by one, I decided to tell them. And this was the first time I told anyone in person that I was gay. And so my first friend, we ended up going to a restaurant off campus, and we had like a little friend date. We just hung out and got food and went shopping in the mall. But on the way back, we were waiting on the train to take us back to campus, and I told her, I had to tell you something. And so she asked me what, and I couldn't get the words out of my mouth because I just didn't know how to say them. I never said them out loud. I never told anyone in person that I was gay. And so eventually I just started laughing and telling her, oh, ha ha ha, I'm not going to tell you anymore. And I was making all these excuses not to tell her. And she was getting kind of frustrated because I told her I need to tell her something, and then I just wasn't saying anything. After probably 10 minutes of this, I finally told her, do you remember those times when I told you I was in a meeting, or I was doing this activity or doing that? And she would be like, yeah. And so I told her I was actually on a date. And she got super excited. She was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you didn't tell me. Who have you been dating? Like, what were you, like, why didn't you tell us? And so I told her, well, do you want to see their picture? And she said yes. And so I pulled up his picture, and I was like, it's the guy on the left. And so she looked at the picture and then looked at me and didn't say anything for a second. And she kind of had this puzzled look on her face because obviously she did not realize I was gay. And after a couple seconds, she was like, this is so exciting. And she was all bubbly and happy. And we talked about it for like the next like 30, 45 minutes. And it was awesome. So that made it easier to tell the next person. I was still super nervous, but it didn't take me as long the next time to tell the people. So after about a week or so, I ended up telling all my main core group of friends. And so everyone that I was really close with knew. And so after probably another week or two, I ended up actually being in a relationship with the guy who I was going on dates with. So this was my first boyfriend. And we dated for about 4 months, and it ended up ending after 4 months. But those 4 months were probably the happiest I had ever been in my life, because this was the first time I was ever being completely honest with myself and to those closest to me and closest around me. I didn't have to hide who I was. I could be trusting with them. They didn't care. It was just so amazing. I mean, most people around campus still didn't really know, but my main group of friends and the guy that I was dating, obviously, they all knew. And so this was a really changing experience, and I cannot believe, like, I cannot even think about living the life the way I was, because I was so secretive and kind of ashamed of who I was that I just was not living a very happy life. And so after we broke up, I didn't really date anyone for a while, but I decided to start talking to other people and telling people I was gay. So even just like the casual people I was friends with, I started, if it ever came up saying like, oh, do you like that person? Or have you dated anyone since we've been here? Or any kind of questions like that. I'd be like, oh yeah, I dated this guy, or yes, I like guys. And no one would care. It was just getting easier and easier to tell people. And I was finally able to actually say the words I'm gay and not be worried about what they would think. Because ultimately it doesn't matter what they think. It's who you are. They knew you beforehand. You're not a different person because of it. You're the same person. And so it was just relieving, and it was just making my life happier and easier to live. And so that's where I'm at today. I still haven't told my parents. I haven't told anyone in my family. None of them know. The only people that know are people here on campus and one or two of my really close friends at home. So my coming out story is not over. I still have a long ways to go, but I am extremely proud and thankful for everything that I have done so far in my life. I don't regret a single thing, and I can't imagine still being in the closet. So yeah, I guess that's my coming out story, or the start of my coming out story. If you were to tell me a year ago that I was going to make a coming out story, I would have probably laughed in your face and been like, heck no, I'm not gay. What are you talking about? Stop, just stop. So I have made huge progress, and I highly suggest, if any of you are struggling with coming out, or if you are in the same situation that I am, that you told some people but not everybody, feel free to comment below or send me a message or somehow contact me. I'd be happy to talk to you. I'd love to listen and hear your stories. This is my first video on YouTube. I'm hoping to try to make more. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button below, comment, subscribe, and I hope to see you all again soon. Bye!